One day, I decided to visit the hospital where my husband works. It was a sunny afternoon and the halls of the hospital buzzed with the usual flurry of medical professionals and patients moving back and forth. As I navigated through the bustling corridors with a bouquet of flowers for John, I unexpectedly bumped into Jessica. "Emily, what are you doing here?" "You're completely out of place," Jessica remarked with a mix of surprise and condescension. Her voice carried across the hallway, turning heads. "If you came here looking for a job, you won't find one now. Go back home." Her words stung, and I felt a knot form in my stomach. Around us, a few doctors paused mid-step, their expressions a mixture of confusion and curiosity. I couldn't fathom why Jessica would think I was seeking a job, especially in such a dismissive tone. "I can't believe it, what is she saying?" I thought, my heart pounding. I feared this misunderstanding might escalate into something serious. It was crucial to clear the air before rumors started flying around the hospital corridors. Facing Jessica, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Jessica, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not here for a job. I'm just visiting John." I gestured to the flowers in my hand, hoping to soften the atmosphere. Jessica looked puzzled for a moment, then her face relaxed into a sheepish smile. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Emily. I thought you were someone else for a moment there. How embarrassing." She laughed off her mistake, but the tension lingered in the air. Despite the awkward start, I decided to explain my presence further, hoping to completely dissolve any remnants of the misunderstanding. "John and I have been quite busy with our new house and the kids. It's been a while since I visited the hospital. I just wanted to give him a surprise." Jessica nodded, her demeanor shifting to a more friendly tone. "That's very sweet of you. John must be thrilled to see you here." Her response eased my anxiety, and we parted ways amiably, but I couldn't shake off the initial discomfort her words had caused. As I continued down the hall, my mind replayed the encounter. I pondered over Jessica's abrupt judgment and realized it was perhaps a reflection of her own stresses and strains being a surgeon. It reminded me that we all carry our burdens in different ways, and misunderstandings can happen even among friends. With a deep breath, I let go of any lingering irritation, focusing on the joy I hoped to bring John with my unexpected visit. The visit from Jessica, which initially seemed like a delightful opportunity for our families to bond, took an unexpected turn right from the moment she entered our home. As she and her daughter crossed the threshold, Jessica's gaze swept across the room, her eyes narrowing slightly as if she were trying to unearth secrets hidden in the walls or the slightly creaky floorboards. "This house feels historical. Is it an heirloom passed down from your ancestors?" she inquired, her tone curious but edged with a hint of scrutiny. "No, actually we bought it second-hand. We moved in just last year and indeed it's old," John replied, his voice carrying a mix of pride and a slight defensiveness. As he spoke, Jessica's eyes darted from one piece of furniture to another, assessing each item as though she were evaluating their worth at an auction rather than enjoying a casual visit. Both John and I were taken aback by her directness, which bordered on rudeness. It wasn't what we had expected from a casual afternoon tea meant to deepen our friendship. Outside the living room, the laughter and cheerful shouts of our children playing together provided a stark contrast to the increasingly stiff atmosphere among the adults. During a lull in the conversation, Jessica turned to John and asked, "Which department do you work in at the hospital?" "I work in the emergency department," John began, a hint of hesitation in his voice, aware of the social dynamics often associated with job roles in the medical field. "But actually, I'm not a doctor. I'm a nurse. I support the doctors, mainly." "Really? You're a nurse?" Jessica's eyebrows shot up, surprise etched on her face. "Yes, I am. I graduated from medical school, but haven't passed the licensing exam yet. I still intend to retake it next year," John explained, his tone neutral yet firm, as if he had defended his position before. Jessica paused, seemingly choosing her next words with care. "It's quite unusual to hear of someone graduating from medical school and not passing the licensing exam. The conversation slowly turned towards the financial implications of our life choices. Can a nurse's salary properly support a family with children? Are you managing the mortgage payments and living expenses okay, or is that the reason behind choosing an old second-hand house? Each question from Jessica felt like an invasion, prying into matters too personal and delicate for such casual inquiry. Her words stung, and all John and I could muster were forced smiles. The more she repeated her intrusive questions, the more the initial warmth of our gathering faded into discomfort. After Jessica and her daughter left, the silence in our home was palpable. I turned to John, feeling a mixture of guilt and regret. John, I'm really sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable because of what Jessica did. Maybe I should keep some distance from her from now on. Don't worry about it, John reassured me, his smile gentle yet tinged with disappointment. It was unexpected, but her personality certainly stands out. Despite his reassuring words, I couldn't help but feel that our little tea party had revealed more than I had anticipated, not just about Jessica's perceptions, but about the invisible barriers and judgments often hidden within casual friendships. As John and I discussed the day, we agreed that while maintaining professional courtesy was important, perhaps a closer personal relationship with Jessica might not be as beneficial as we had hoped. It was refreshing to make connections with other moms in the neighborhood, but after the incident with Jessica, I decided it would be best to keep our interactions to a minimum. As time passed, our family celebrated the first birthday of our second son, and life gradually found its new rhythm. I began contemplating my return to work, feeling fortunate that John's parents lived nearby and were a great support with the kids. One brisk morning, I found myself at the hospital where John works for a meeting. Arriving a bit early, I stopped by the hospital cafe to grab a hot coffee and take a brief moment to myself. As I sat there, sipping the warm beverage and enjoying the brief respite, I heard a voice that was becoming all too familiar. "Oh my, isn't that Emily?" "It's been such a long time," Jessica exclaimed as she approached me. Her tone was light, but I could sense the underlying sarcasm. "Hello, Jessica. How have you been?" "Good, what brings you here today?" "Are you here to see John? Maybe a job interview or something? It must be tough on just John's income, right?" She smirked, her words tinged with the usual provocativeness. Wanting to keep the conversation light and steer away from any potential conflict, I replied, "Well, something like that." However, Jessica didn't seem inclined to stop there. She continued to probe, her gaze intense. "This hospital has various stores, right? So where are you working part-time at? The convenience store, or maybe the restaurant?" After a brief pause, feeling the need to cut the conversation short, I replied curtly, "Sorry, it's about time for my appointment." I quickly left the cafe, hurrying through the hospital corridors. I pressed the elevator button to take me to the top floor, where I had an important job consultation scheduled with the director. The meeting lasted about an hour, after which I headed to the large auditorium of the university located within the hospital. An important announcement from the director was scheduled that afternoon, and all hospital staff were gathered there. On my way to the auditorium, I fortuitously ran into John. "John, that's great. After the director's talk, let's go for lunch together," I suggested, eager for some quality time with him. "Sounds good. It's a bit of a walk, but how about pasta?" he offered with a warm smile. "The pasta place behind the hospital sounds good. I haven't been there in a long time." "I'm actually looking forward to it," I agreed happily. It had been a while since I had last visited the hospital, and having lunch with my husband felt like a rare treat. As we made our way to the auditorium, I engaged in brief conversations with several doctors, feeling more integrated and respected within the hospital community than ever before. As I walked leisurely behind John towards the auditorium, exchanging greetings and catching up with colleagues, the corridor seemed to echo with the lively chatter of old times. "Emily, it's really been a while, and I heard you had a child." "Congratulations from the bottom of my heart," one doctor expressed warmly. Their sincere words brought a smile to my face, and I felt a comforting sense of belonging. Another doctor joined in, his tone mixed with humor and a hint of struggle. "Emily, you were such a big help here. We've been in quite a stir since you left." Laughter followed, though it was clear there was truth behind his words about the challenges they'd faced. As these pleasant exchanges continued, another colleague asked, with genuine interest, "Is your return imminent?" While the question hinted at hopes of my comeback, the overall reunion felt heartwarming, filled with nostalgia and relief to see my colleagues doing well. However, the warm atmosphere took a sharp turn when Jessica appeared. "Emily, why are you here?" she asked, her tone laced with curiosity yet somehow invasive. "Are you heading to the auditorium by any chance?" "Yes, that's right. I have some business," I responded, trying to maintain modesty yet clarity in my tone, conscious of the several colleagues around us. Jessica's demeanor shifted, her curiosity seemed to morph into skepticism. "But the gathering is only for doctors and nurses, right? Why would a part-timer be here?" she challenged, not bothering to hide her disbelief. Her remark dropped like a stone in the pond of our conversation, silencing the corridor momentarily. A nearby doctor muttered under his breath, "A part-time lady like her?" Another voiced his concern more audibly, "Is she okay, I wonder?" Not wanting to cause any unnecessary commotion, I tried to withstand Jessica's probing, but it only seemed to provoke her further. "Why are you ignoring me? It's like you don't think at all, you," Jessica sneered, losing any pretense of politeness. "Lost your way? The auditorium isn't this way. If you're looking for part-time work, go the other direction. Now please leave," she commanded, looking down on me disparagingly. The doctors present, who had been a part of the earlier friendly exchanges, were visibly appalled by Jessica's behavior. Their expressions turned from shock to sympathy and then to anger. They began to stand by me, raising their voices in unison against Jessica. Disappointment and frustration were evident on their faces, and their voices carried a strong sense of rejection towards Jessica's actions. "Hold on, what kind of way is that to speak to Emily? Don't you have any manners? Apologize to her right now," they demanded, not just disapproving but actively reproaching Jessica's conduct. The doctors gathered around, looking tense and prepared to confront Jessica. The atmosphere was charged with tension, creating a palpable divide as they defended me against what they saw as unacceptable behavior. This solidarity among my colleagues not only comforted me but also underscored the respect and camaraderie that had always characterized our interactions, starkly contrasting with Jessica's harshness. Jessica, faced with the united front against her, appeared confused and at a loss for words. What's going on? I just pointed out that she doesn't belong here. The meeting is only for relevant personnel, and she doesn't fit the bill, right?" She attempted to justify her stance, but my patience had dwindled to nothing. With a composed tone, yet with content sharp as a blade, I addressed Jessica. "Jessica, you really are brave, aren't you? Or is it that you simply can't read the room?" I critiqued her calmly, watching as she struggled to formulate a response. "Huh, what did you just say?" she replied, visibly perplexed. I calmly made my position clear. "You'll understand soon enough, the actions you took against me and your careless remarks, the serious consequences they could bring." The doctors present showed no sympathy for Jessica. "Look, your future is now utterly uncertain," they said cuttingly. "You might want to start looking for another job while you still can." They nodded earnestly to each other. Cornered, Jessica was still unable to hide her panic and anger. "So why on earth are all of you defending this non-regular employee so much? I don't understand why you rate her so highly," she raised her voice, her frustration palpable. The conversation among the doctors echoed in the hallway. "Are you the new surgical specialist who joined last year?" one doctor inquired. "So that's why you don't know Emily?" "That's quite pitiful," another added. Jessica, with anger on her face and indignation in her tone, retorted, "What can you explain what you mean by that?" Her anger stemmed from the belief that judging people by their professional standing, regardless of their duties as a doctor, was against human dignity. The fact that someone with such values was in our workplace was deeply shocking to me, and I couldn't help but feel distrustful. Jessica seemed unaware but, in fact, I was the very person she should respect the most. The other doctors completely ignored Jessica's questions and left her with cold stares, quietly leaving the scene. Then, I stated calmly, "Well, Jessica, we can talk more about this later. You may find my husband's position as a nurse pitiable, but no matter how hard you try, you can never be like John. Besides, the fact that you find meaning in competing shows a great misunderstanding on your part." Earlier, looked stunned. The atmosphere around her shifted as she realized her earlier behavior might impact how her colleagues viewed her selection. Despite the recent altercation, her credentials spoke for themselves, and the hospital had recognized her professional contributions. I stood there, observing the mixed reactions among the crowd, feeling a blend of vindication and curiosity about how Jessica would handle this twist. As the director continued listing the selected individuals, I glanced at John, who was watching the proceedings with keen interest. "Next, I would like to introduce Emily," the director announced, turning toward me with a smile. The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted into applause. Jessica's eyes widened as she turned to look at me, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. I walked up to the front, my heart pounding with a mix of nervousness and pride. As I stood beside the director, facing the crowd, I could feel the curious stares and the whispers of surprise from many who had only known me as John's wife or as the alleged part-timer. "Emily has been instrumental in some of our key projects and has shown exceptional leadership in managing our outreach programs," the director explained. "Her inclusion in this overseas training program is well-deserved, reflecting her dedication and expertise." John's face lit up with pride, and he gave me a supportive nod. The reality that I was not just a visitor or a part-time worker at the hospital, but a significant contributor to its operations, was now clear to everyone, including Jessica. As the applause died down, the director concluded the announcements and discussed some logistical details about the training program. The meeting wrapped up with a sense of excitement and anticipation about the opportunities ahead. Jessica, who had regained her composure, approached me as the crowd began to disperse. "Emily, I had no idea," she stammered, clearly embarrassed. "I apologize for my earlier comments. It seems I really didn't understand your role here." I nodded, accepting her apology with a gracious smile. "It's okay, Jessica. Misunderstandings happen. What's important is how we move forward from them," I replied, hoping this experience would be a learning curve for her about humility and respect. As we exited the auditorium, John joined me, his arm slipping around my shoulders. "Well, that was quite a revelation, wasn't it?" he said with a laugh. "Yes, and quite the day," I responded, feeling a mixture of relief and satisfaction. Not only had I stood up for myself, but I had also gained the recognition I deserved, marking a significant moment in my professional life. As we walked towards the pasta place behind the hospital for our lunch date, I felt lighter and more optimistic about the future, both at work and at home. Jessica responded affirmatively, her confidence not waning, despite the director's questioning tone. "Yes, that's correct," she stated clearly, her voice carrying across the now hushed room. The weight of her words seemed to press down on the audience, leaving a palpable tension in the air. I sat there, my emotions mixed. On one hand, I felt the sting of her words, targeting people like John and perhaps even myself, those she deemed inexperienced or impudent. On the other, I was aware of the broader implications of her statement for the hospital's reputation and morale. The director, still maintaining his composed demeanor, continued, his words measured and deliberate. "Jessica, while your achievements are commendable, and your ambition is clear, it's essential to remember that a hospital thrives on teamwork and respect among all its staff. We are a community here, not just a collection of individuals." Jessica nodded, seemingly taking his words into consideration, but her expression remained somewhat defiant. The director then turned his attention back to the audience, addressing everyone present with a more encouraging tone. "As we embark on these new training opportunities, let's remember that every member of our hospital, regardless of their role or experience level, contributes to our success. We grow together, learn together, and improve together," he declared, his voice steady and inspiring. The atmosphere slowly shifted as the director's message resonated with the crowd, reminding everyone of the collective mission of the hospital. Applause broke out once more, not as raucous as before, but filled with a renewed sense of unity and purpose. After the ceremony, as people began to mingle and discuss the events, John came over to where I was seated. "Well, that was something," he said with a wry smile, his earlier calmness giving way to a more contemplative expression. "Yes, it was. But it's not surprising, coming from Jessica," I replied, watching as Jessica interacted with a few colleagues not far from us. Her demeanor was professional, yet there was an edge to her conversations, a directness that some might find off-putting. John chuckled softly. "True. But no matter what she says, it doesn't change who we are or the value we bring. We're here because we've earned our place, just like she has." I nodded, feeling reassured by John's words. His perspective was a grounding force, reminding me of the importance of staying true to one's values. In the face of criticism or adversity, we'll just keep doing our best, supporting each other. "That's what really matters," I said, my resolve firming. John agreed, and together we moved towards the group, ready to engage with our colleagues and foster the sense of community that the director had emphasized. The incident with Jessica, while unsettling, was a reminder of the dynamic and sometimes challenging nature of working in a complex environment like a hospital. It underscored the necessity of resilience, understanding, and above all, maintaining a focus on the collective good over individual ambition. As the director's words settled over the room, a mix of murmurs and quiet speculation followed. My role as chief of the medical department, previously unknown to many due to my extended maternity leave, had shifted the dynamics of the conversation significantly. The announcement that I would be returning to my duties next month added another layer of anticipation among the staff. Jessica, still visibly shaken by the revelation, composed herself as best she could. Her eyes darted around the room, seeking affirmation or perhaps challenge, but found none. Instead, there was a palpable respect for the director's disclosure, and her earlier assertions seemed to deflate in this new context. "Indeed," I continued, addressing the room with renewed confidence, "I have been with this hospital for several years, leading our medical team before my leave. I am eager to return and contribute to our collective goals and challenges, especially in such a demanding and crucial environment as the one we're about to enter with the overseas program." The director then elaborated on the upcoming mission, explaining the challenges of the conflict zone where Jessica would lead the team. "The conditions will be tough, and the resources limited," he explained, his voice steady, instilling a sense of gravity to the undertaking. "But I have full confidence in our team's capabilities. Emily will be there not just in a leadership capacity, but as a mentor and support." Jessica, now somewhat recovered and steadied by a sense of duty, responded, "Thank you, Director. I am ready to lead the team and face the challenges ahead. My clinical skills have been tested under pressure here, and I will extend my utmost effort to manage and improve the situation abroad." The room's atmosphere shifted from initial surprise to one of collaborative spirit. The staff seemed to rally around the idea of facing these intense challenges as a unified team. I felt a deep sense of responsibility, not only to lead effectively but also to mentor Jessica and others to work harmoniously under such extreme conditions. As the meeting adjourned, many colleagues approached to express their support and excitement about my return. The earlier tension dissolved into a buzz of positive energy, with discussions about the training and the specifics of our deployment. John, who had watched the entire proceedings with pride and a touch of amusement, came over. "Looks like you'll have your hands full, but I know you'll handle it with the same dedication you've always shown," he said, his eyes twinkling with affection and respect. "Yes, it's going to be a challenge, but a worthwhile one. And having a familiar face in Jessica, despite everything, might just make the task a bit more interesting," I replied, half-jokingly. We left the room together, discussing the details of the upcoming mission. Despite the high stakes and the potential hardships, I felt ready and determined, bolstered by the support of my colleagues and the clear trust of the director. The road ahead would be difficult, but it was a journey I was ready to embark on, knowing I had a strong team behind me and a vital role to play. As John and I approached the scene of the accident, our medical instincts kicked in immediately. The loud crash still echoed in our ears as we saw the tangled mess of metal that once were cars. The air was filled with the sharp scent of gasoline and the faint sound of a car horn that droned on endlessly. "Are you okay?" John called out, his voice a mix of concern and professional calm. He quickly assessed the situation, approaching the driver who appeared dazed but conscious within the crumpled vehicle. I moved towards the pedestrian, who was sitting on the curb, looking visibly shaken but without any apparent severe injuries. "Can you tell me your name? Do you know where you are?" I asked, checking for signs of disorientation or concussion. Meanwhile, Jessica, who had followed us out from the hospital, seemed momentarily frozen as she took in the scene. Her previous composure lost in the face of real-time emergency. After a brief moment, she snapped back to reality and hurried over to assist, her medical training taking over her initial shock. "Jessica, can you help me stabilize his neck?" I directed her towards the pedestrian, who might have sustained neck injuries. Jessica nodded, her earlier animosity replaced by a focused concern as she carefully held the man's head steady, avoiding any potential spinal injury. John was speaking to the driver, trying to keep him calm while assessing his condition. "You're going to be okay, we're here to help," he reassured the driver, who was slowly coming to grips with what had happened. As we worked, I noticed how Jessica's demeanor changed. The urgency of the situation seemed to bring out a level of professionalism and empathy that wasn't evident in our earlier interaction. It was a reminder of why she was chosen for the overseas assignment. Despite her faults, her clinical skills were indeed first class. After ensuring that emergency services were on their way and that immediate medical concerns were addressed, John and I finally stepped back. The adrenaline of the moment was beginning to subside, replaced by a quiet acknowledgement of the fragility of life and the suddenness with which situations can change. Jessica stood up from where she had been assisting the pedestrian, her hand slightly trembling. "That was intense," she murmured, almost to herself. "Yes, it was," I replied, my tone softening. "But you handled yourself well." It's in situations like these that we really see the value of our training and the importance of staying composed. Jessica nodded, her eyes meeting mine with a newfound respect. Perhaps the day's events had given her a different perspective on her colleagues and the realities of our profession. It was a small step towards mending the rift her earlier comments had created. "Let's get back to the hospital, make sure these two are properly looked after," I suggested, and with a final glance at the scene, we all turned to walk back, the earlier plans for lunch forgotten in the wake of the emergency. As we walked back, the hospital in sight again, I reflected on the unexpected turns of the day, from professional confrontations to real-life emergencies, and how each situation required its own set of responses. Today had been a vivid reminder of the complexities and demands of our roles in the hospital, and how, ultimately, we all relied on each other to navigate through them. Jessica, seemingly taken aback by John's stern directive, hesitated before retreating to the sidelines, her usual confidence shattered by the reality of the crisis at hand. Meanwhile, John, his actions smooth and deliberate, checked the elderly person's vitals, ensuring no critical conditions were overlooked. As John worked, I kept my focus on coordinating the emergency response, ensuring that everyone involved received the necessary medical attention. The elderly man was stable, but still in shock from the sudden accident. My training and experience had prepared me for moments like this, but the urgency of real-world application was always a stark reminder of the responsibilities we bore as medical professionals. "Everything's under control here," John reported, looking up from the elderly man. "Vitals are stable, no bleeding, but let's keep him monitored until the paramedics arrive." I nodded in approval, relieved that the immediate danger had been mitigated. Turning my attention back to Jessica, I saw her standing somewhat apart from the action, her demeanor one of introspection rather than participation. It was clear that the day's events had been a profound lesson for her on the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical application in high-pressure situations. "Jessica," I called to her, softening my voice a bit to ease the tension. "This is a learning opportunity. Watching and understanding how to act swiftly and effectively in emergencies is as important as any procedure you perform in the operating room. Jessica looked towards me, her face a mix of frustration and realization. I understand," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the noise of the surrounding scene. "It's just that everything happens so fast." "Yes, emergencies do," I replied, maintaining a supportive tone. "But remember, each of us has been overwhelmed at some point. What matters is how we learn and adapt from these experiences." John joined us, having ensured the elderly man was as comfortable as possible while awaiting further medical assistance. "It's okay, Jessica. We all start somewhere, and today, you've seen what it's like outside the controlled environment of a hospital room. Take this experience, learn from it, and use it to improve," he added, reinforcing the constructive nature of the feedback. Jessica nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting a mix of appreciation and renewed determination. "Thank you, both of you. I will do better next time," she promised, her tone more composed now, a sign that she was beginning to process the lessons of the day. As the paramedics arrived and took over, ensuring that all individuals involved in the accident were attended to professionally, I felt a sense of accomplishment not just in handling the situation, but in mentoring Jessica through her apparent failings. It was these moments that truly tested and built the caliber of medical professionals. With the emergency now under control, John and I resumed our walk towards the restaurant, ready to finally enjoy that much-needed break. "Let's get that pasta now," I suggested with a smile, ready to leave the intensity of the morning behind and focus on a quieter, more reflective lunch. Recognized and to outperform others, but today showed that practical experience and the ability to act under pressure are what really count, John pointed out. His voice was even, designed not to provoke, but to make Jessica truly understand the weight of his words. Jessica looked around, her face a mixture of defiance and realization as the implications of John's observation sank in. The emergency scenario had stripped away any pretense, revealing the gaps in her hands-on experience and her ability to respond effectively when faced with the unexpected. I stepped closer, my tone still firm but infused with a hint of encouragement. "Jessica, being a great surgeon isn't just about what happens in the operating room. It's also about how you handle emergencies, how you interact with your team, and how you contribute to every aspect of patient care." Jessica was silent for a moment, her eyes darting between John and me. Finally, she nodded slowly, the fight draining out of her. "You're right," she admitted, her voice low. "I let my confidence in my surgical skills cloud my judgment outside of the operating room. I need to work on that." I could see the shift in her demeanor, a softening, a sign of her beginning to acknowledge her limitations and the need for growth. "Everyone has strengths and weaknesses," I continued. "The key is to learn from these situations. You're an excellent surgeon, Jessica, but today was about more than surgical skill. It was about being a part of a team that responds when needed most." As the paramedics and police took over, ensuring the accident victims were cared for and the scene was cleared, I saw Jessica step aside, taking a moment to herself. She seemed to be reflecting on the events, perhaps reconsidering her approach to her work and her interactions with colleagues. The crowd began to disperse, with the hospital staff returning to their duties. John and I prepared to finally head for our delayed lunch, the urgency of the morning giving way to a more relaxed atmosphere. As we walked away, John squeezed my shoulder lightly. "Good handling back there," he said with a smile. "Not just the medical side, but dealing with Jessica too." "Thanks, John. It's all in a day's work," I replied, feeling a sense of accomplishment not just for managing the emergency, but for potentially starting a new chapter in my relationship with Jessica, one based on mutual respect and understanding. As we left the scene behind, I felt hopeful that this experience would be a turning point for Jessica, a step towards becoming not just a better surgeon, but a better teammate and a more rounded medical professional. Over her career. Despite the disappointment of her resignation, there was a sense of relief among the hospital staff. Jessica's departure allowed for a more cohesive and supportive environment to flourish, one where teamwork and mutual respect were valued above personal ambition. As John and I boarded the plane, ready to embark on our journey of learning and growth, I couldn't help but reflect on the events that had unfolded. The encounter with Jessica had been challenging, but it had also been illuminating. It had reinforced the importance of humility, teamwork, and continuous self-improvement in the medical profession. Throughout the ordeal, John had been my steadfast companion, offering support and guidance at every turn. Together, we had navigated through difficult situations, emerging stronger and more united than before. As the plane took off, I looked out the window, feeling a sense of anticipation for the adventures that lay ahead. The overseas training program promised to be an opportunity for personal and professional development, a chance to broaden our horizons and make a positive impact in the world of medicine. And as for Jessica, I hoped that she would find peace and fulfillment in whatever path she chose to pursue. Perhaps our encounter had served as a wake-up call, prompting her to reevaluate her priorities and strive for personal growth. In the end, the journey of a medical professional is not just about saving lives, it's also about learning, growing, and becoming the best version of ourselves that we can be. And as I looked forward to the adventures that awaited us, I knew that John and I were ready to embrace the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead, together. With integrity and dedication. As John and I embarked on our journey to the airport, the excitement of the upcoming overseas training filled the air. But beyond the anticipation of acquiring new knowledge and skills, there was a shared commitment to making a difference in the medical field. For me, it was about using my abilities to contribute to the betterment of healthcare, to ensure that patients received the best possible care and treatment. I believed that by working together with John and other dedicated medical professionals, we could elevate our hospital to new heights of excellence. John's determination to obtain his medical license mirrored my own aspirations. His dedication to his craft was evident, and I knew that with his passion and hard work, he would achieve great things in his career. As we continued our journey, I reflected on the challenges we had faced with Jessica and the lessons we had learned along the way. It was a reminder of the importance of humility, teamwork, and continuous self-improvement in the medical profession. With renewed determination and a sense of purpose, I looked forward to the opportunities that lay ahead. And as the plane took off, I knew that John and I were ready to embrace the challenges and adventures of our medical careers, committed to making a positive impact in the world of